The Trump administration is expanding a major energy pledge, announcing that 80% of all power delivered to American homes and businesses will be protected from price hikes if communities welcome AI data centers. This comes after big tech companies already signed an initial commitment, but now governors, legislators, and utility providers are signing on as well.
The American innovators and consumers thrive to win together because we're insisting that AI data centers and big tech companies pay their own way, and that's what they're doing, and they're happy to do it because this way they're going to be able to function and function brilliantly. They're going to have a lot of electricity left over, and they'll put that into the grid, so we'll actually end up with more electricity. The rates are going to go down.
But residents in several states are still concerned.
It takes a lot of water to maintain them, which means our water bill is going to be super high.
What is in there for their neighborhood? What is in there for us? Diminished values? Would you like to buy a house 150 feet away from the data center?
Massive amounts of water and electricity. Those funds should not be passed on.
Yeah, joining us now for tonight's big close-up is EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin. Administrator, you are never shying away from hard questions on this topic, and we can't thank you enough for it. Tonight is no different. Explain to us how this energy pledge comes to fruition. Like, how does it work in actuality? And how does your department or your agency, how does it play a role in it?
Right. Well, this is one of the top pillars for us at EPA to power the great American comeback. We want to help make America the AI capital of the world. And most Americans across this country want the United States to win this race to be the AI capital of the world. This data center build out is a key part of achieving that. But in order to do that, we have to make sure that these data centers are being built where local residents aren't seeing their bills go up. And this ratepayer protection pledge is President Trump's leadership in ensuring that the parties involved in getting these data centers built structure the deal in a way where the people who live in that community, if they're going to see any movement in their bill, they're going to see it to go down, not up. President Trump also in that clip that you just played is talking about some of that behind the meter effort, the effort to be able to generate your own capacity. We're seeing small modular reactors get built. Some bad data center projects want to be a net taker from the grid. There are good projects out there that want to be a net giver to the grid. And the clip that you played right after that of some people talking about water, from that standpoint, again, examples of good data center deals is one where they're using, for example, a closed-loop data center that's 100% recyclable water.
Then why not mandate
some of these data center projects aren't even pursuing it.
If that's one that works, because there are ones that use a lot of water and it is a problem, why not mandate that? If this administration and our government is all in on data centers and taking them to all these rural communities and a lot of people don't want them and they are worried about their water, why not make something, if that is so reliable, why not mandate it so that every data center built, especially that has any government supplement, has that, at least that guarantee in it?
Yeah, so as far as me as EPA administrator, every day that I'm in power, I'm limiting my power. I'm limiting my power to the single best reading of the law, and I'm limiting my power in a way that will limit the power of whoever follows me in this position after me. My message to Congress is, if you want me to do something other than what I'm doing, then change the law, and then I will follow the law, whatever the law says. But we have to be careful with the shoe is on the other foot scenario where another administration can come in and start really stomping on local control in a really bad way that we'd regret.
Hey, Administrator Kevin Corke, thank you for your time tonight. I want to ask you about what happened in Minnesota. We could talk about data centers all night, but I want to make a little news here. What can you tell us about what happened with respect to the cyber attacks in Minnesota, and what should we know moving forward about some of the ways that we can prevent what happened there from happening elsewhere?
I mean, well, cybersecurity is something it's not a new issue. It's been out there for a long time, and there's a lot of individual responsibility on the part of companies, of local water systems and infrastructure, of local municipalities, and also state governments. You know, this is something that it's not just fought through our national military or our national intelligence network, there's a lot of responsibility that gets passed off because we can all become victims in a way to this type of offensive effort. I don't have news to report as it relates to any specific attack, anything that hasn't been released publicly. But to President Trump's point that we heard yesterday, I was with him at Camp David, is that you have a lack of leadership right now on the ground in key areas where there isn't enough focus and attention that is being brought to this effort of Homeland Security. You were just talking in the last clip about people illegally coming into a country, people who are illegal, who are registering to vote or even voting. Another aspect of national security is to step up your game of being prepared to be able to counter this cyber attack offensive, which is a threat not just internally within our own country, but can continue to be a threat from abroad.
Certainly. Administrator Zeldin, I want to turn to this part of the discussion. New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed the first statewide moratorium on data centers, arguing there are environmental concerns.
We know artificial intelligence is changing our lives, our economy, our world, our civilization at an incredible speed. And there was some anxiety just around that fact. The focus was on water. Water is a more limited resource around the environmental challenges.
But at the same time, Hochul is allowing massive solar farms to take over rural upstate New York, swallowing up prime farmland, crippling local communities with high costs. I'll be honest with you, Administrator, I don't like either idea. I don't want to live by a data center or a wind farm, to be quite frank. But, what do you make of this? And not just this aspect or maybe the hypocrisy of it, but just how states are responding to this. This is going to be an issue in the midterms. I think it's going to be a sleeper issue, this issue of data centers. And I think it's going to cut both ways in terms of Republican and Democrat. And what do you make of some of these states taking a stand on it so early out?
Well, I mean, local control is critical. I mean, we're talking about the solar farm piece. It's Albany politicians, bureaucrats telling local communities, we don't care whether or not you want these solar farms. They're coming to you because we said so. And that's causing outrage with these upstate New Yorkers who are not happy about getting steamrolled, getting railroaded by their state capital. They want to have a voice. I mean, you're talking about, your own position, your concerns as it relates to, data centers or solar farms, and you want that power of your voice. That local control piece is critical. And as it relates to the data center build out, I mean, these data centers are going to get built. They're just not going to get built in New York. They'll get built somewhere else where it's a business-friendly state where they want them. Now you have local communities and residents with questions, so you should be a leader and making sure that data centers are being built in a way that lower rates, that they are being a net provider onto the grid with the energy capacity, and that they aren't continuously using water, that there's 100% recyclable water or better with regards to their plan. That's leadership. When you just say, okay, we're going to have a statewide moratorium, we're not going to have any built now, we're talking about projects that are into the billions and the tens of the billions that are just going to get built elsewhere in a state that wants them.
That's right.
Yeah, Administrator, there are
and by the way, I really get a kick out of the people who they're on their phones and on social media and they're typing onto their phone about how they don't want a data center. It's like, do you realize how much data centers are in your lives right now with that phone, with that social media app and more? I mean, give me a break.
You're still selling me against it on that one.
Well, some of those very people include a number of Democratic congressional candidates who are taking a position very similar to Kathy Hochul's here as well. So it seems that Democrats have decided to really stake their claim on opposition to data centers. And we do talk to a number of Americans, like you mentioned, who have concerns that we're not adequately wrestling with the trade-offs to their communities. So do you worry that the left is taking ownership of the opposition to this issue when so many Americans seem to agree with them?
Well, it's important to be concerned about a bad data center deal, a bad data center build getting punched over the finish line. So that concern is well-founded. But at the end of the day, what we shouldn't do is just adopt the belief that the worst examples of a data center build out is just the way it is across the country. In my first 9.5 months as EPA Administrator, I went to all 50 states. I've been to a lot of groundbreakings, and a lot of these projects are getting built in a way that's responsible. And that's the key to President Trump's ratepayer protection pledge. Make sure bills go down, electric energy is being provided on the grid, not taken from it, and this point that we said with regards to water. We shouldn't paint all data centers like they're all equal. There's a big range from the good to the bad, and not make believe like it's all bad.
Administrator, real quickly, I want to ask you something. Earlier this week, I had Congressman Tim Burchett on my Outkick podcast, and he said something to me that I thought was really interesting, and I want to get your take on it. He said that after meetings at the Pentagon, he was confident, or at least the idea was thrown out, to have some of these data centers built on military bases or on military land. It can be contained. That way it would take out, this discussion of being on rural land and near people's homes. Have you heard anything about that plan, and what do you think of it?
Yeah, personally, I think it's a good idea, and the great philosopher Tim Burchett is never wrong. That man with the beauty of that Carhartt jacket, rolling the hallways of the Capitol. He's right. And it's something that, as far as EPA goes, we have brownfield sites, we have Superfund sites. The siting of these projects, it's really important. You look at the water that is around. If you were to build a data center like right next to a waterway that is receding, they have bad droughts, they don't have the climate to support it. It's a different discussion in the siting in one location versus another that might make far more sense.
Administrator Zeldin, we love having you on. You always bring answers. You don't just avoid and dodge, dive, duck, dodge, and dodge. So we appreciate the heck out of that. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for believing in small government. We appreciate that, too.
You got to have a great night.
Yes, sir. Tommy, okay, real quick, just really one reaction here. What are your thoughts? I get what he's saying, and even what Tim Burchett's saying. A lot of those military bases get their electricity and things from those same municipalities, though.
Yeah. No, and it's not going to completely solve the problem. But in terms of putting it to the one lady's point about nobody wants to look at a data center, maybe that would solve a little bit of the problem there. I know they want to put one by the Nashville Zoo. People in Nashville are not happy about that one. I will just say, when I brought up this could be a sleeper issue, Kaylee also picked up on that. I do fear that the left is going to use this and the right is ignoring it, and I don't think that's wise.
The Democrat socialist in, I believe it's Wisconsin. That's how she got her foothold there, was data centers.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.